We are going to record. All right, well, welcome everyone. I'm just taking a second to see if our principal, Miss Macon, had been able to join us yet. She had a couple of things going on, so I don't see her. So I'll just go ahead and get us started. Welcome to our October Parent Academy. We are so excited to have you with us. Just thankful that you guys take a little bit of time out of your schedule each month to join us and to be here with us. I'm going to go ahead and give just a little bit of a plug for next month because I know at the end of this, we kind of can get a little bit busy. And so sometimes we forget to make those announcements. But next month, on November the 30th, so kind of same time, same place, 12 o'clock here on this Zoom link, we will have our November Parent Academy that's actually going to be led by Colleen, and I hope I say this right, Ulrich. She is one of our county members, and she is from the Office of Social Media, and she is going to do a fantastic presentation for you and your student, your family. Really, it's something for everybody because we're all tied into social media somehow. And so that presentation will be just on social media, what apps to have, what apps to maybe steer clear of, how your students can use social media responsibly, and how we as adults can use social media responsibly as well. So before we get into our guest speakers and their presentation, and I hope I do this correctly, I am where technology sometimes comes to fail. So I used to say that to my students all the time when I was in the classroom, but I'm going to launch a little bit of a poll here. There's only 3 questions to it. The first question just asks you what program your student is here at the Buice Center, so we can kind of gauge where our participation is coming from. The second one just says, what is the most problematic behavior that you see at home? And so I kind of thought through some list of maybe my own children that I have at home. And kind of put some there, but obviously if there is something that is not on that poll, put it in the chat. We would love to have your suggestions added to that. And then why we're here today. So while we do know that there can be problematic behaviors, we also want to talk about positive behaviors and how we can support those behaviors at home. So what are some positive behaviors that you would want to see reinforced at home? And we've got some of them listed there, but again, in the chat, if we didn't put it in there and you have a great idea, we would love for you to share that with us. Also in the chat, I have just a little welcome and announcement post there that says the way that we're going to do our question and answer time, because we know that these guys have some great information for you today. So the way we're going to do our question and answer is if you will put your questions there in the chat. And then we've got some great staff members here at Buice that are going to help me monitor that. And we will just kind of at the end of the presentation, we'll take about 10-15 minutes and we will review those and we'll try to answer as many of those as we can that's appropriate for the entire group. So I'm going to hush and I'm going to let the experts speak because that is why they are here. And they have given up, or not given up, but they have given us some great quality planning and time to be able to present this to you. So Lewis and Devin, I'm going to let you do your own introductions because I think you can probably tell us what your titles and your areas of expertise are a little bit better than I can. And again, if you have any questions or if you have any comments, just post those in the chat and we will get those rolled out as the presentation goes along. But thank y'all so much for being here. And I really am looking forward to the great information that you're going to learn today.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I want to
go ahead.
introduce myself. My name is Devin Geyer. I'm EBD instructional coach. So I work with a lot of students presenting emotional behavior disorders, and we're going to kind of go over some strategies that may be beneficial for you in the home working with your children.
And I'm Lewis Holbrook. I work primarily with what we call low incidence, might refer to as low functioning at times. That's not a a negative term. It's just as far as some of the interventions might be a little different. So it's a slightly different perspective. I always say behavior is behavior though. But I try to, Devin and I might come at things a little bit differently to get the same results. So I'm here for that piece as well.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everyone. As we go through this, I'll be talking about some things, and Lewis will jump in and add some things as we go through it. And please, we'd really like you guys to, if you have any questions, please put those in the chat box, and we can get to them at the end of this presentation. Okay. Lewis, can you see the screen okay?
Yep, looks great.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Just like Christine has said, we really want to focus on increasing those positive behaviors in the home, working with your children. I know that sometimes it can be very frustrating, so we really like to give you guys some insight into those types of behaviors, what we can do to positively reinforce those appropriate behaviors. And we're going to talk about some pitfalls we as parents typically run into when trying to reinforce our children's positive behaviors. So let's talk a little bit just about basic concepts. All human behavior is learned. Behaviors that occur repeatedly serve some type of function or purpose. Behavior can be taught, and encouraging desired behavior will yield better results than merely punishing problem behavior. There's a lot of research out there on that fact. We really want to focus on those positive behaviors. So one of the most powerful tools that you have as a parent is reinforcement, okay? Reinforcement is basically providing a consequence after a behavior that results in that behavior occurring more often in the future. So we really want to look for those opportunities to give children positive feedback when they're behaving appropriately. And a lot of times we end up reinforcing those inappropriate behaviors, and that's why we see a pattern of those inappropriate behaviors or those undesired behaviors occur more often. So we want to make sure that we're positively reinforcing those appropriate behaviors. The research has shown that behaviors that are positively reinforced are much more likely to be repeated. So we really want to focus on the desired behaviors. We want to look at ways that we can encourage our children to engage in those appropriate behaviors. So let's look at some tools that can help do that. One of the biggest things that can reinforce our students positively is looking at those tangible rewards. This can be anything from tokens, point system, tangible rewards, all the way to the most basic need is food. But we really want students to earn those privileges, extra computer time, time with others. But in order for this reinforcement to be effective, we want to have a couple of things. We want to pair it with positive verbal feedback. We want this to be descriptive. We want the children to see that what we're reinforcing is that specific behavior. So we want to let them know what that is. We always want to maintain high energy and enthusiasm when they engage in the desired behavior, and increase the amount of positive behavior required to earn a reward. We always want to keep the focus on the child's behavior rather than that reward. So in order for our students to benefit from these types of reinforcement, we have to know their interests. We have to know what motivates them. There's different ways we can do this. Sometimes it's just watching the student and seeing what they like to engage in, what their interests are. Sometimes we'll do preference assessments where we'll have them pick certain things. But we really want to kind of get an idea of what they like and restrict access to those things. We're the ones that determine when they've earned that based on those contingencies that we set. And we really want to give them a high a high density reinforcement schedule. That means we want to focus on them earning a lot at first, and then we gradually fade that out. All right. And we always want to provide that positive social attention for that appropriate behavior, just talking to them, letting them know what they did that worked really well.
And I wanted to chime in there, Devin. He mentioned this before, but we call that behavior specific praise. So we want to really point out. Also, he said, you know, we're focusing more on the behavior than the. Yes, focusing more on the behavior than the reward. So really, when they've earned access to something like, hey, you know, you finished your homework, that was a great job with math. Now you can watch TV. Letting them know that this is why you're getting what you're getting. That's pretty important.
Absolutely. I think a lot of times too, you know, people want to associate consequences as associated with punitive measures. And that's not necessarily always the case. Consequences can occur after every behavior. They can be good or they can be bad. So when we react to a student's behavior, that is a type of consequence. And a lot of times, depending on what we do after a behavior, it can inadvertently reinforce undesired behaviors or it can reinforce the appropriate behavior. Let me give you an example. If we send a child to their room for engaging in an undesired behavior, and that child has access to video games, television, other fun things in their room, then that child is likely to continue to engage in that inappropriate behavior because they're being reinforced for it by going to their room and engaging in fun things. So we really want to avoid getting involved in what we refer to as this behavior trap. Sometimes our students, if they're, like the attention, telling them stop, no, don't do that, can actually reinforce some of their behaviors because they're getting that verbal attention from you. Sometimes if we're telling them, hey, if you don't clean this up, you're going to your room. And well, they didn't want to clean it up in the first place. And so then you send them to their room, they still didn't have to clean it up. So they'll continue to engage in that behavior to avoid having to clean something up. And we want to be careful to give the reward first. We really want to make sure that once they've completed the desired behavior, then we reinforce them with that tangible or that activity or whatever reinforces them to continue to engage in that appropriate behavior. So we want to make sure that we prepare ourselves for what's called an extinction burst. That extinction burst is when a child is no longer getting the type of reinforcement they are used to getting, whether it be attention or escape. Their behavior may and likely will get worse because they're trying to bring back that reinforcement. So we've got to put that behavior on extinction. That means basically we're still not giving into it. Even when that child begins to escalate and take it up a notch, we have to continue to keep it on what we refer to as extinction.
I like to think about this. A lot of people will, when we do this with a kid in the school and things start to get worse, most people, that's when they want to stop doing it because it's like, well, this isn't getting any better. It's making it worse. And that's usually a sign to us that what we're doing is actually working. Making sure in the home, though, that it's something that you can manage safely is important. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. But understand when things tend to get a little bit worse, we're probably on the right track as far as what we're doing because the kid is trying more and more behaviors to get what used to work. And suddenly it's not working and they don't understand why.
Yeah, and that's so important. They've got to learn that that behavior is no longer going to get them what they're used to getting. And so we've got to kind of run through that extinction burst and make sure that they realize that, okay, hey, this behavior is no longer working for me, so I'm not going to engage in it because it doesn't work. So let's talk about some ways that we can implement some corrective procedures or interventions that can correct behavior when they begin to occur. All right, one is response blocking. Response blocking is basically the adult uses his or her body to stop the child from engaging in appropriate behavior. This may include when the child engages in self-injurious behavior, aggressive behavior, property destruction. We really want to avoid um, talking that student down, because a lot of times when they're in that mode, they're not going to understand logic or reason in those situations. So we want to try to use our body to block and keep us and that student safe without providing them that verbal attention. I like to use that phrase, block, don't talk. Um, in order for blocking to be effective, we really want to try to get that student into a location where it's sterile. There's not a lot of things that they can grab or get a hold of, and try to remove them from not only that attention, but also that escape from things. We want to make sure that we're in a position where we're keeping a balance, shoulder width apart, feet are shoulder width apart, palms facing out, and we're just trying to block any strikes or aggression from uh, moving towards us. A lot of times, if a child charges at you, try to just get yourself in that position, get low, spin the child so you just kind of move them away and give yourself some space. Lewis, I'm going to let you talk about some of these
Sure.
interventions too.
Yeah, I'm happy to. All right, so next is functional communication training. That's how we are giving them an effective way to request what they want. And this can just be through simple language, like requesting a break, or if they want something specific, they can request it. A lot of the kids I work with might be using a picture exchange, a simple sign, or even an augmentative communication device where they'll push a button or hand me a card that says, I want a break right now, or it just depends on what the needs of the student are as to what the communication would be. If you have, I know no one's ever heard of this, but if you ever had a hard time getting your child away from electronics, like a computer or TV, sometimes we'll use functional communication to request, 5 more minutes. The reason I personally like a concrete card is over time, we can begin to restrict that access so they can only ask, 5 more minutes so many times. I also like less verbal language and more either using a simple sign or a communication device or a card, because while when things are going swimmingly, they can probably ask for these things even verbally. When they're kind of annoyed, it's a lot harder. I mean, think of yourself when you get cut off in traffic. You definitely aren't the most eloquent you've ever been. You probably have a few curse words and maybe a few signs of your own. Our kids are no different. When they're in that mode of, I really wanted this and I need it, it's not always easy to be coherent. So this is a way to teach them through consistent use of this is how you get what you want. And so one of the important parts listed there at the bottom is when you're using this, the inappropriate behavior is ignored. So if I have a kid who might be banging his head because he wants access to cookies, I can teach him to hand me a card. What I should not do is still allow him to bang his head and give him a cookie because of that. That part's going to be blocked and ignored, and I will direct him to hand the card instead. Can you forward to the next one, Devin?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll let you control that since you're sharing. So here's some different things about taking a break specifically. For a lot of kids, just saying taking a break isn't going to work. So we need to identify some things that they can do that might be helpful when they're, upset or not dealing well with things. You'll see on the first slide on the left, this kid is going to engage in some sort of physical activity to get that energy out. You'll see there in the center on the bottom what I was talking about earlier, as far as we might limit how many breaks they get via how many cards they have. Now, I say this when I do it in the classroom and when I've worked with parents with this as well. While we might limit the child's ability to request a break, you as the parent or as a teacher can always request that they take a break. And then you'll see on the right a little social story that describes for the student what a break is going to look like, how they can take it, those sorts of things. And those we tend to tailor to the specific student. But it's good for the student to understand this is what a break looks like. It's good to have practice with it. It's never going to work the first time when they're upset. So I actually have students practice the activity when they're not upset, so they understand, okay, I hand a card, this is where I go, this is what I do. And I found that helpful. Can you hit it again, Devin?
And I think that I just want to add too that I think, I really like FCT because all behavior is a form of communication. A lot of times our children are trying to get something or get out of something. And if we teach them the appropriate way to get that attention or to get that escape, whether it's through a card exchange, signal, or even verbal, we're teaching them to use their words to communicate. And that's such a huge thing.
Absolutely. I think this might come up. I'll do the next one in a second. I think this might come up down the road. But when we're just using extinction, we're not really teaching anything new. Whereas when we're using either redirection via 3-step prompt, or we're teaching them to functionally request something, we're teaching a skill. So, while we want to decrease the unwanted behaviors, wouldn't it be great if we can teach them things that will get them what they want and what we want and give them a skill? So here's something, high probability request. I suggest this a lot for students I work with. If I know that they really just like something we're about to do. Let's say, for example, well, for me, if I had to go to the DMV, right? Before I do that and get in that awful line, okay, I'm going to stop at Starbucks and get something I like to drink and eat. That's the high probability request for me. I'm likely to follow through with that. And then when I'm in a better mood, I'm more likely to be able to stand in that line at the DMV. And I probably even set something up on the end, another high probability request. When I'm done here, I'm going to go chill out and finish my coffee. So the same thing with our students. Let's say that it's bedtime and let's say that it's, here we go. Let's say that it's bedtime and that's a low probability request, meaning that your son or daughter does not like to go to bed. Before I request that they engage in that, I might request a couple of things that are easy for them. Hey, give me 5. Great job giving me 5. Let's get a snack. Hey, wonderful. Okay, now let's go get ready for bed. Some things that get them in that mode of, I'm doing good, I'm earning stuff, this is a fun activity. I found that very helpful. And just so you know, everything we're talking about today, Devin and I did not come up with. Much smarter people than us came up with these and published articles and all that kind of good stuff. So, but this is definitely one that we use often. Okay, next.
All right, I am going to try to share this video. So give me just a second and see if I can get this to work.
Fingers crossed.
Hey, Devin, while you're doing that, let me ask Lewis real quick. So
Yeah.
Let's say you have a student, though, or a child, and you give that child their break. They still have to come back to that kind of unwanted activity, right? Or that activity that maybe they're not desiring. So
Yes.
what do you do if when the student comes back to that activity or refuses to come back to that activity because maybe the break was a little bit, more wanted? What are some suggestions of just getting that student or that child back into whatever it was that they were doing to have to take the break from?
So we'll look at a couple of different
Okay.
things. One is you've got 5 breaks, and if you use them all at once, then from then we're going to have to use extinction, and you're going to go through it. That's definitely one way to do it. Another thing, it depends on how reinforcing the break is, right? We want to make sure that compliance always has something that's more reinforcing going on than the break, if possible.
Gotcha.
You'll notice early on, Devin talked about using tokens and things. I use those across the board when working with students at home in the past. And they tend to get something better when they have to leave a desired thing. So if it's time to go brush your teeth, kids hates brushing his teeth. He requests a break. Fantastic. Go have a break. Now it's time to come back to brush your teeth. Guess what? You're going to earn 2 tokens when you brush your teeth. So that you can, if you're working with some type of system at home, which I highly recommend, having it very concrete so that that kid knows over time, wow, I earned 1 token for getting my clothes on and stuff, but I earned 3 for brushing my teeth. Then they're more likely to engage in that. But another thing that you touched on that I just wanted to mention is that sometimes, this is my highly behavioral technical term, call it a double whammy, is that sometimes we'll ask a kid to leave the favorite thing in the world, and then we're going to go have them do the worst thing in the world. So I'm thinking at home, maybe they're watching TV and they get 5 more minutes because they requested. Fantastic. But now you have to go straight to bed. Well, that's the least favorite thing. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll intersperse something that doesn't suck as much, excuse my French. And so we do, that's actually pretty tame for me. But we know that if, hey, this is your favorite thing in the world, we need to move from that to something that's not as aversive, something that they're slightly more likely to do. So keeping that similar to a high probability request, we might go from, hey, watch TV, which is the highest probability request because they're always going to do it when I ask. We're not going to go to a super low probability request next. We might have something in the middle, like, okay, TV's finished, let's go do a puzzle for 2 minutes. And they're kind of about puzzles, right? But it's a lot easier to go from a puzzle to go to bed than it is to go to TV to go to bed. So if you're having those kind of issues at home where it's like, well, I want to use it because it's their favorite thing, but getting them off of it is so awful. Make sure whatever is coming next isn't the hardest thing in the world. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. I'm trying it tonight.
Okay. I hit a chord with brush your teeth and kids, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Any luck, Devin? He's working on it. If not, Devin can describe it. Let's see. Oh, it looks like it's on there. There we go.
Okay, give me a high five. Good job. Can you wave bye-bye?
Bye-bye.
Good. Where's your nose? Oh, so good. Okay, push the chair into the table. You did it! Good job.
So in that instance, pushing the chair into the table was not something that she was likely to do, as likely as it was the simple, hey, give me 5. What was the other one? Touch your nose and that kind of stuff. So I like to use a 2-to-1 ratio at least of here's 2 things that you're really good at and you're going to get rewarded and you're happy. And then I'll ask you to do the thing that might not be your favorite thing to do. So that's kind of how that works. All right, we're pulling up the PowerPoint again, right, Devin?
Yep.
All right. You want me to keep going? I'm happy to.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we just watched that. 3-step prompting, my favorite thing in the world. So this is just a set prompting system. I can tell you if they're in Gwinnett County, they will be familiar with this. So it's good to use at home as well. It's just a system of least to most prompts, meaning we start with a least intrusive prompt, which is just what we call this tell, show, and do. So first we're going to tell them what to do. In this example, it's lining up. So we just say line up. If they comply and they actually line up, we're going to give them behavior specific praise. Hey, great job lining up. If not, we go to step 2, which is show. We tell them again, and then we tell them what we want to do. Line up right here, and you're pointing to where they need to line up. Again, if they comply, we're going to praise them. Hey, great job lining up, okay? We tend to give about 3 to 5 seconds, regardless of processing time or anything else that might be involved. I don't care what the functioning level of the student is. Once you go past 5 seconds, they're generally not paying attention anymore. That's for any student. And then if they don't on the first or second, we're going to go directly to the do, which is where we help them. We guide them to do what we need them to do. So generally, we're going to give a full physical prompt. We're lining up, and then we move them to where they go. This is differential reinforcement, meaning if they do it the first or the second time, we're going to praise them. Some kids we would give an edible to. Some kids would earn a token. It depends on how difficult their behavior is. If we have to physically move them, if we get to that third step, then we would not give any type of reinforcement. So we want them to learn over time, hey, if you do it the first or second time, you're going to get good things. If I have to do it for you, it's just not as good. You're not going to get praised. Another thing, just a little bit of background on 3-step prompting. It was initially coined back in the early 70s, and it was used to teach what we would call severe and profound students now to brush their teeth. So it is a teaching tool as well as a compliance getter, so to speak. Okay. All right, and here it is just written out for you. I won't go through this again. This is going to be recorded, so you can go back through it and look at your leisure, but it just kind of goes through how you tell, show, and do. What's important about it, I think this is important for any kid, is that they can predict when me as an adult will step in and guide them to do what they need to do. So it allows them to realize, hey, when I do it that first or second time, I'm going to get some good reinforcement. And that third time, the adult will help me to do it. Important part of that, if you see the very bottom right down there, is we're still using extinction like we talked about before. We're not going to say no and don't stop. Keeping it really to just 3 steps, it's hard for a lot of people to do. There shouldn't be coaxing, because that becomes confusing to the kids. So if it's like, hey, I need you to clean your room, come on, you know what to do, you can do it, let's do it. It's no longer a 3-step prompt. You've lost the kid. He doesn't know when you're going to help. The model might come in at a different time. So just keeping it very specific. Clean up your room. And if they don't, clean up your room like this and show them what it looks like. Then give them another 3 to 5 seconds. And then if they don't, we clean up like this and hand over hand guide them to clean up. It's a very effective teaching tool. So here's a couple of tips. You have to be close to the person you're working with. If I ask a kid from across the room to clean up the room and then I have to model it, I have to go to where the toys are. If I have to physically prompt them, I need to be close. If you're working from behind another person, which I always recommend, you want to lean in and be close. The further you are away from that student physically, the more likely you are to get head-butted or hit, or they might run away and that sort of thing. You want to make sure that your head isn't directly behind the student's head. We tend to use our shoulder on the back of their head if we have to be that close. It says so. That's the next thing. Sorry. Block and release if the child becomes aggressive, and move through the prompts at a rapid pace. So generally we're going to wait 3 to 5 seconds, but if the student is aggressive, we can roll through those prompts a lot quicker, because hitting me is not cleaning your room, right? So we want to go immediately to the next prompt so that we get through with whatever activity we're doing in a quick fashion.
All right, we have a quick video on this, and we can try to pull it up.
Devin, while you're doing that, I'll kind of read out the poll results to you and to Lewis so that you kind of have an idea of kind of where we are with this. So out of our parent and all of our parents who are on, it looks like you have answered this. What's the most problematic behavior that you see at home? The number one was arguing and talking back with adults, followed by a three-way tie of the non-compliance to directions, physical aggression, and then not completing tasks, but arguing kind of won that out. And then what's the positive behavior you would like to see reinforced? It was a tie between following directions and then completing tasks or chores, which I think you kind of touched on. So just to give y'all an idea too of kind of where our parents are seeing as you go into this next part.
And as you pull that up, I did want to mention something. It's mentioned kind of tangentially, I guess, in the thing, but so everything we're talking about works, right? But it's not always possible to do this across all behaviors for your kid. What I don't want to do is set anybody up for failure. So a lot of times, specifically when working with parents, I will say pick one thing and start there and do these methods, but make sure it's something that you can manage. It's usually not going to be the worst thing ever, right? You're gonna work with something that you think you'll be successful with in a fairly short period of time. And then once you can do it for one thing, it's a lot easier to then kind of pull out and do it for the next thing and the next thing. That's a lot easier, and people tend to pull their hair out a lot less than trying to do it across for all behaviors at all the time. That can be very difficult. So definitely with parents, we do this in the classroom too sometimes, but definitely with parents, I usually talk about what are your three most difficult things, and which one of those, if we kind of attacked it first, do you think you could be successful with? So, there's our video. Jenny, come on, it's time to line up. Let's go. Go to the door. Jenny, come on, we gotta go. Let's go, it's time to go.
Come on, Jenny, let's go. Sort. Jenny, quit playing with that. I need you to sort.
It is not uncommon for our students to refuse to comply with adult instruction or academic tasks. To approach these problems in a consistent manner, a system of least to most prompts is recommended. Three-step guided compliance is a research-based method that has been shown to increase compliance and improve skill acquisition. Let's look at an example where a teacher attempts to gain compliance ineffectively.
Come on, it's time to line up. Let's go. Go to the door. Come on, we gotta go. Let's go. It's time to go. It's PE. It's your favorite. We gotta go. Come on.
Notice that the teacher continues to give verbal prompts, but the student remains on the floor with no compliance. When repeated verbal prompts are ineffective, the teacher offers a preferred edible. While this may appear to be effective if the student had gotten up, it would have increased the likelihood of even more inappropriate behavior in the future. Now, let's take a look at an example of three-step guided compliance. Step 1. Tell. A verbal prompt is delivered. If the student is compliant, provide reinforcement, verbal praise. If after 5 seconds they have not complied, go to Step 2. Step 2. Show. Verbal prompt plus model. If student is compliant, provide reinforcement, verbal praise. If after 5 seconds they have not complied, go to Step 3. Step 3. Verbal prompt plus physical hand-over-hand guidance. Reinforcement is not delivered for Step 3. Now let's look at a three-step prompt being used to effectively gain compliance. Step 1. Tell. A verbal prompt.
Hey Jenny, give me the doll.
To utilize a three-step prompt effectively, during Step 1, only deliver one verbal prompt. Do not present the verbal prompt as a question, such as, would you like to line up? Or, could you go to the door? Instead, present it as a command, such as, line up, walk to the door.
Give me the doll like this. You do.
Step 2, show, which is a verbal paired with a model. Step 2, show, serves to give a visual demonstration of the desired instruction. Usually we use a model. However, a picture cue or sign could be utilized in place of a model for some students. Just make sure that you stay consistent with whichever prompt you use.
You give me the doll.
Step 3, do, which is a verbal prompt paired with physical assistance. Notice that the teacher did not provide verbal praise for step 3. Verbal praise would have been provided had the student complied with step 1 or 2 in an attempt to increase compliance. Now let's watch a complete prompting sequence from start to finish. Hey Jenny, give me the doll. Give me the doll like this. You do. You give me the doll. Okay, it's time to line up. Let's go to the door. Let's go to the door like this. You do. You go to the door. Let's look at another example where a teacher attempts to gain compliance ineffectively. Note that the teacher is not employing a set strategy for having her complete the task. He just continues to verbally instruct
Jenny,
her.
quit playing with that. I need you to sort. Jenny, I know you can sort. Let's go. Time to sort. That's not right.
Here the teacher does not help her find the correct response. Instead, he provides attention based upon the incorrect answer. Using this strategy, the student is unlikely to learn the correct answer, and the added verbal attention may lead to more incorrect responding. Now let's look at a 3-step prompt being used to effectively gain compliance.
You do. Jenny, you need to sort yellow like that. Next one, sort red. Sort red like this. You do. Sort red. Sort red.
Here's the student responding to the 3-step prompt.
Good job sorting red. Excellent work, Jenny. Sort yellow.
Since she was independently responding, a new 3-step prompt is not necessary.
Very good. Excellent. Good work.
Okay, so I know most of those are like perfect world situations where you use a 3-step and suddenly the child responds. I know it doesn't work that way in real life, but we wanted to show kind of at the very basic what it would look like if you used a 3-step prompt. There's usually a lot of interfering behaviors. It's actually, to me, you know, we're talking about arguing. That is a good way to cut out a lot of the arguing that goes on at home. I do this with my youngest, and he gets annoyed with me every day because he's a big arguer. I swear he's going to be a lawyer. But if I ask him to get out his book, he'll start to tell me about his entire day and how everything's awful in his life. And so instead of me responding to that and moving on, you know, instead of me saying, oh, that's really bad. Yeah, I know it's bad. Da, da, da. I will say, get out your book right there. You do it. And as soon as I say you do it, he's like, oh, I know what the next step is. And then I help him get out his book. What that can make people angry and upset, but I would argue that getting there and getting it done quick is important. Otherwise, we tend to reinforce that arguing because in the moment, arguing tends to serve 2 purposes. One is, as we talked about earlier, attention. We get a lot of attention about whatever it is we're arguing about. The other tends to be escape, and that while I'm arguing, we're not doing what we should be doing at the moment. So if I think about at home and just a common situation of I need the kid to come with me to the store because I can't leave them at home. And I'll say, all right, get in the car. We need to go to Target or whatever. And I get a long litany about, you know, oh, well, I wasn't done watching my show. If you just give me 5 more minutes, this and that and the other. If I engage with that and argue back, it becomes much more about either I'm giving him too much attention for that inappropriate behavior or we're not actually leaving for Target. Either of those situations is not the outcome that I'm looking for. So using a very short way just not to argue. 3-step prompt is good for that. It annoys people. It would annoy me if someone did it to me. But over time, you start to realize, well, I'm not going to get any feedback for that. What you might find is it's not totally rude and totally nasty because when they're complying, you can talk to them all they want. You know, if it's, hey, let's go to Target, and he's he's cleaning up. Oh, well, I didn't really want to go, but here we go. Oh, fantastic. I'm glad you're coming along. You know, that's great. You gave up your thing. Why don't we look, while we're there, we'll look at new Xbox games and that sort of thing, because they're complying and they're going along with what you want them to do. So it doesn't make you automatically a jerk, to use a three-step prompt. But what it does is teaches them that they're not going to get escape from things, and they're not going to get attention for things that we don't like. So, okay.
Okay, as we kind of wrap this up, I just want you guys to be aware of some pitfalls that we run into as parents and trying to support our children in the home. I'm going to go through just a couple. One is sometimes we get worried about just upsetting our child. Okay, so there's this false belief that if we just appease our children, that they won't have any meltdowns. And so it often causes us as parents to kind of walk around on eggshells to try to avoid upsetting our children. Truth is, you are going to decide how your child's behavior is reinforced, not them. And the only way you will gain and maintain control of the environment your child is in is to make sure that you're willing to hold your child accountable. Okay, wait them out if you need to. You know, let them have their outbursts. You continue to be calm and collected, follow through with the consequences, and make sure we're not inadvertently reinforcing the undesired behavior, but wait until they show the desired behavior. Another one is we don't model the expectations that we have for our children. Our children are smart, and they can pick up on things that we do. So if we're raising our voice around our child, then they're going to think that that's acceptable, and they're going to model some of those same behaviors in the home. So you need to be able to show exactly what's expected from your child. You don't really follow through. Sometimes as parents, when we have undesirable behavior from children, we think we follow through with it, but we really don't. So something I want you to try is take a hard look at the household expectations and just decide for one full day that you're going to enforce those expectations. And you should know within really about an hour if you're really following through with those expectations. Your interactions with your child are perceived as boring. Okay, if we're implementing consequences or trying to curb the misbehavior of our children, we need to make sure that we're kind of motivating them, inspiring them. If we're putting them in timeout and they're already bored, then it's unlikely to be effective going timeout. They really need to feel like they're missing something if you're putting them in that timeout or putting them on extinction. We give too many reminders. A reminder is something that should happen before a rule is broken, not after. So if your child, for example, didn't clean their room and you let them know, hey, yeah, you can go out and play, but next time clean your room first. Really, this isn't going to be effective. If they feel like they can get away with certain things without completing those expectations first, they're going to continue to do that. So really an effective response would simply be to let your child know, well, you've got to clean your room before you go out and do anything. Sometimes we take misbehavior personally. We don't want to do that. We have to understand that when we take misbehavior personally, it causes us to yell, scold, lecture, argue, get into these power struggles. And when we react emotionally like that, it just causes resentment, distrust. Ultimately, it can lead to more frequent and more severe behavior. This is one of the biggest mistakes parents make. So we really need to be able to be in control of our own emotions during those times. Sometimes our expectations are too low. We as parents should be realistic on what our children can and cannot do. that doesn't mean we can't expect them to increase some positive behaviors. We just have to set the expectation. We have to make sure that we're giving them those things that they need to do throughout the day. If there's too much time to idle, that's usually going to result in more misbehavior. So we really want to kind of cut those opportunities in half and really focus on kind of a routine for our children throughout the day. Now, I understand as parents, we've got jobs, we've got things to do, but if we're too focused on rushing through our day or trying to micromanage or overreact, stressing out over stuff that we've got to do, it can create tension in the home, and it causes our children to become more prone to misbehavior. So we really need to kind of relax, breathe, slow down, and stay calm. Our children will really see that and mirror a lot of that energy that we release as parents in the home. Sometimes we need to be aware that our children can be mad at us, and that's okay. Um, it's difficult to kind of reinforce our children if they're mad at us, but we want to make sure that we take time to talk with our children, build that rapport, build the trusting relationship. We can't be afraid to talk to our kids about some serious issues, and to the extent that they can understand. Eventually, they will get over them. They're resilient, but being honest really builds that trust. Last but not least, our kids have to have buy-in to what we're doing. So we really have to know our children, know their interests, know what motivates them. That is really the key to increasing desired behavior. When we're using some type of token economy or positive reinforcement, we have to know what is going to motivate them, what they're willing to work for. And we've just got to kind of expect that they'll engage in the appropriate behaviors if they're motivated to do those things. And that's really it. I know some of these 10 mistakes can be difficult to consider, and no one likes to think that our children dislike them, or our things that we do are boring, but we really want to create an environment that our children want to be in. So I want to leave you guys with just an ending thought. All behavior serves a function. All behavior can be changed and shaped. And it is our job to help our children learn appropriate, effective, and efficient means that serve the same function as the aberrant behavior. All right. And we're going to open it up to just a couple questions. I know we're running short on time, so let's see what we can get to.
So we have one in the chat box that says that basically their daughter gets frustrated and shuts down when they don't understand her for the first time. So sometimes it happens when maybe they just didn't hear her, or maybe it happens whenever she's trying to explain a story. Like I know my daughter likes to come home and tell all the things that happened at school that day, but we don't have a lot of context to it. Or maybe it's something that she's remembered from a long time ago. They try to repeat what they think she is telling them, but they don't exactly, if they don't say it back how she wants them to, then she gets mad. Is there some advice or just some practical tips that you can give on that?
I like using visuals for that. Even if it's like, oh, my kid's verbal, they don't need that, that's fine. I will tell you from way back when I was in the classroom and we first introduced PECs in the county, I had plenty of verbal kids that would get their PECs book out and they didn't need it, but it was more of a word retrieval type of thing. So they could look and see specific things. So if intelligibility is an issue, that's something that she could point to help. And it might also kind of help her gauge, put her thoughts in order. I'm having a hard time with that right now. But having a way to visually look at what I want to say. To me, it's all about, because I see this with a lot of people, my son, my youngest, if he's trying to, he's very ADHD, and if he's saying something and I'm make him repeat it too many times, he's just like, forget it. So we came up with a system where he doesn't like to write, but he will write down some key words, and I'll have him look over the key words and kind of put them in order. And that helps them think through that process. So any type of intervention like that can be adapted to any level. So if it's a lower functioning kid that just needs visuals to request wants and needs, or if it's more of just a general, I want to communicate with you, having something that you can turn to in those moments and saying, this might help me as far as a way to express myself to you is good.
Yeah, and to piggyback on that, what we like to do with one of our higher functioning is journaling. We really give the children, a book or a little journal that they can write in, and we establish times with them where, we can actually sit down and talk with them. We all lead, busy lives, but we want to kind of set up a time where, hey, if you need to get this out, journal right now. Later, we'll take a look at it and we can talk about it then. And it's become an effective tool for a lot of kids that just need to get out some of those thoughts and things. And sometimes it's easier for kids to communicate that way. I know. Yeah. It works real well with my son. And then my daughter, she loves to just draw. So she'll draw some things to kind of get out some of those thoughts, and then we'll look at it and we'll talk about it. And there's always some kind of hidden meaning behind those drawings, and it's good. And you build those relationships when you get an opportunity to talk about those, but it's important that we just schedule those times.
And this one will be real quick. So noticing too that I think physical aggression was the other one that on the other problematic behaviors that we kind of just a real quick, like, maybe like a 1 or 2 minute kind of explanation of if you've got a student who is just, when they get home from school, because again, this is talking about too, about supporting those positive behaviors after they've been at school. I get the weekends are a little bit different, but they've come home from school and maybe they go right into that physical aggression. What's just a couple of maybe tips and tricks that they could use just to be able to put that on extinction as well?
I like what we had talked about earlier as far as teaching them how to do a break procedure. Mm-hmm. So they might come home and so nothing gets taught in the moment, right? If I'm pissed off and screaming at somebody, you really can't do a good intervention for me while that's happening. But if it's a process, like I know when I get out of, and it depends on the functioning level of the student, I'm thinking all up and down the board here. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's talking through what a break would look like when they're not upset, and then practicing that. I'm going to show you this card, and they're in a good mood, so they'll talk about it at the moment. And when I show you this card, just go in your room. Nothing bad's going to happen. You're not in trouble. This is what it's going to look like. Do you need me to check on you in 10 minutes? Do you need me to check on you in 20 minutes? Do you want to set a timer? Those types of things. For my lower functioning kids, it's the process of practicing that physically while it's going on. And while it's not going on, excuse me. And then when it is going on, they're more likely to respond. For other kids, it doesn't have to be a break. It can be, my day was hard and I've been dealing with it all day. When I get home, these are the activities I want to do that are going to help me to calm down. And again, that's a cross-functioning level. Some kids might need to go, hide under the bed for 20 minutes. That's fine. You're at home. You can do what you want. I've had kids that like physical activity during that time, so they can't come in and get right to homework or whatever our usual schedule is. We need to figure out what's going to work long time as far as setting up a schedule of activities that this kid can engage in so that we're not getting to that aggression right
away. That's good. Well, thank y'all so much. I hope for those of our parents that are online, I hope that you have gotten some great information. I know that I have. And just thank you so much, Devin and Lewis, for taking time out of your day today to be with us. They are great supporters of what we do here at Buice. Just know that when we say that we've got some of the best staff in the county working with your students, that this is exactly what we're talking about. And so they support us here and really support our efforts in helping you as parents and what's going on there in your home. So again, our next Parent Academy is November the 30th. And again, that's all about just a complete 180 from this, but it's all about social media, about just some of the great things that social media can do for us, but also some of the things that we need to be alert about and some of the things that we need to try to avoid because it is an ever-changing world. So thank you so much for being with us today, and we cannot wait to see you back here in November. Thank y'all.
Bye, guys.